This episode is brought to you by Companion. Iris and Josh seem like the perfect match, but when a weekend getaway turns into a nightmare, Iris realizes that things aren't as perfect as they appear. From the creators of Barbarian and the studio that brought you The Notebook comes a twisted tale of modern romance and the sweet satisfaction of revenge. Companion, only in theaters January 31st. Rated R, under 17, not admitted without parent.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
I just think it was too easy for Ridley Scott, and I would have much preferred to have seen this film made by somebody like Danny Boyle, who did Sunshine. This looks great and it's visual. It's good. It's just not as good as the book, just to throw the cat amongst the pigeons. But you couldn't really fail with the source material. The source material was so strong. The book is up there in one of my favourite books of all time. It's one of the funniest books I've read. As I said to George when lockdown began, I was like, I've got potatoes, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to do a Mark Watney.
Hello, joining us today we have George.
Hello.
Charlie.
Hello there.
And as always, Kobe.
Hello.
And we're reviewing The Martian.
Thank you as always to the mighty people for the mighty, mighty tunes. And thanks to Ben from Rockwood Audio for his awesome editing skills.
Please do remember to write a review and rate us on Apple Podcasts and anywhere you can do where you listen to the podcast, because it really does help us.
And you can join in the conversation with us on Twitter
at Flixwatcher Pod and on Instagram
at Flixwatcher.
Hello film fans, welcome to Flixwatcher. Joining us remotely we have George and Charlie. If you would like to say hello to our listeners and tell them a little bit more about who you are and what you do, please.
Hi, I'm George McGee. I am one half of Retro Ramble Podcast.
And who's your fellow co-guest?
That would be me. I am the younger, wiser, greyer brother, Charlie McGee. So yeah, George and I have been doing this podcast for a few years now. We enjoy getting to spend the time together to go back and reminisce about what it was like watching these films when we were younger, and yeah, the same immature, childish comments about these blockbusters rings true today. So yeah, if you're into that sort of thing, please check us out.
When you guys were growing up, this is probably mainly aimed at Charlie in this case. Did you feel the burden of like educating George as to what is a good film? Did you feel that you had to, slap the bad films out of his hand and give him the good ones, or were you just like,
no? It's still very much like it is today. From the very beginning, we would watch a film and I'd be like, "Oh, there's a car crash, there's explosions, that's amazing," and George would be like, "Nah, I'm not sure it really appealed to me on certain levels." So George has always been taking a more academic look at the film. I was always sucked in by the ride of watching the film itself. So yeah, I was a very bad example to George in many areas, not just film.
But then you can have that. Like you said, True Romance, which is probably a film where you got the action, but also you got a good, interesting, compelling story. So when it does match, then there are films that everyone can enjoy.
Well, it also depends on whereabouts you are in Charlie and I's timeline as well, because there's all the sort of, if you think about in the sort of 80s and early 90s, we were just kids and it was the age of video. So, it'd be all round to like who got, whose birthday got out there, whether it was like RoboCop or License to Kill or whatever. And everyone would go around, you'll go around to your mate's house and watch it all together. So there'd be that sort of watching it as a group. But then obviously as Charlie and I grew up and would go and see stuff separately and sort of compare notes. And we've lived together. We've lived in different countries and different cities. So it's interesting in terms of, I say, comparing notes. But then obviously it's nothing better than we still try and get to the cinema as much as we can together, despite living in different countries.
And despite lockdown.
And despite
that was great.
We have done a watch along. We did.
I can't get behind these watch alongs. It just seems, I don't know.
Yeah, we had a few syncing issues, but as long as I think it's fine if you've seen a film before, But
sure.
I wouldn't recommend if it's a film you've never seen before. I think it's tricky.
No. I think, and also what we learned is you need to be on the same sort of setup. So you're either both streaming it on Netflix or you're both watching a physical copy, because otherwise one of you needs to be very patient, because it's only milliseconds, but after half an hour, it's creating a problem.
Secret Cinema, which Helen used to work for, they're doing quite a few. I think there's a Ghostbusters one around the time we're recording, and as much as I love Ghostbusters, I just think it just seems like a pain to log into this thing at the same time as other people, and I don't know.
I'm not sure
me
what
being grouchy.
you get out of it.
Yeah.
To be honest, I guess if you are actually on your own and you're not living with anyone, then you've been watching films with literally no one sat next to you to go, oh, did you see that? Or that's so cool. Whereas, if there's someone in the house, you can still do that. But I don't know. I just find it a bit of a betrayal to the film to be sat there constantly tweeting or texting something, maybe. I don't know. Or I just don't like people, maybe. I'm not sure.
Well, for us, I think that was the benefit, because normally George and I have to work. We're professionals. We watch these films and make notes on them separately. And so what this removed was the need. I didn't make any notes. I think I made them afterwards. But I watched it with George. We joked and we made stuff about it. So we're making a podcast from it. So I think for that sort of thing, the fact that we were going to go on and record an episode, it was brilliant having the watch along, because we experienced the film together. We reacted at the same times. We saw each other reacting, and I think we found it easier to recall that when we were doing the show, rather than I've made notes, you've made notes, let's have a chat and refer to our notes. I think from that, I think we'll probably do it again for that reason. But yeah, I think just to do it with a friend, I think like the rest of it does seem, I'd rather just watch a film either by myself or with some poor unsuspecting person next to me.
Well, we're digressing slightly, guys. We're here talking about The Martian, which is your choice, George. Can you tell us why you chose it and give us a synopsis in a minute or less?
I'm a big science fiction fan. I binged The Martian when I read it. I think it's by Andy Weir, I think it is. And I think it started off as a blog randomly. He wrote it in installments before it was actually published as a book.
Yeah.
But then when I heard it was getting adapted into a film by none other than Sir Ridley Scott, I got really excited, because obviously Ridley Scott is responsible for some of the finest science fiction, Alien and Blade Runner, two of my favorite science fiction films. So yeah, the reason I picked this is because it's a great science fiction film, but if anything, it probably leans more into science fact. It's very sort of, it is all based on, it had, NASA's cooperation. It's got an amazing cast, as I'm sure we're going to talk about. Great central performance by Matt Damon, and it's probably the best film Ridley Scott's done in probably 15, 20 years. Ridley Scott, he's a brilliant visualist. He's always got amazing visuals, but some of the stories and scripts of the past 15 years, they've been messes. I mean, that's my opinion, but I think it's kind of widely accepted. I mean, I haven't got any time for the Alien prequels. I think Prometheus looks fantastic, and Alien Covenant does, but they are messy films that I just don't have time for.
So Helen, nodding her head in agreement with you, with Ridley Scott not producing anything for 15 years. Where do you sit with Ridley Scott, H?
So I always thought that I was a Ridley Scott fan, but it turns out I just liked Alien, Thelma and Louise, Blade Runner, and this. I think it just depends on kind of where maybe the source material comes from, because obviously with this, it's based on, a pretty detailed book. So yeah, I mean, I don't have any time for Prometheus. I think when I saw it at the cinema, I was bitterly disappointed and kind of gave up. And talk of like more Alien films, it's just like, just leave it alone. so it's like, just leave it. Like, it's like dying on the floor. Just leave it. And yeah, sort of when Ridley Scott became a bit obsessed with Russell Crowe, that's kind of when I zoomed out. And he just can't make a short film either. They just have to be like minimum 2 hours. And it's just, yeah. But this, I love The Martian. There's no Martians in it.
Well, he is the Martian.
Yeah. But like, no,
he colonised
like,
it, didn't he? That's
little alien things. There's no aliens in this one, which I think some people were quite upset about when they went to see it. But yeah, no, I saw this at the cinema when it came out. Really enjoyed it. And it's one of those ones that I noticed had popped into Netflix and was like, oh, I should watch it again. But so thanks for picking it, because it was on my list.
It should be noted that Ridley didn't write this. It was Drew Goddard who, we've talked about Ridley before with Thelma and Louise, and we've also talked about Drew Goddard with The Cabin in the Woods, where he directed and wrote that. So I was actually quite surprised that Drew wrote the script for this, because it's a very nuanced script, and I think some of the points I really like were the incidental bits where he's talking to the camera and saying, yeah, I read in a blog, I read somewhere that if you cultivate land on a place, then you've colonized it. And then he says, like, I've colonized Mars. And it's little things like that, those incidental bits, which I think are really nice touches that add to the film and to how the fabric of everything works, which I think really sets this apart, as well as the science, which seems a lot more plausible than in other space movies. Charlie, what are your thoughts on The Martian?
I have quite passionate thoughts about this film, which I enjoyed the film very much at the cinema. I think it's a cinematic masterpiece in many ways. But I can't see how any movie director, especially somebody with the contacts of Ridley Scott, could have failed. I think I can't say how the book is up there in one of my favorite books of all time. It's one of the funniest books I've read. The examples that you just gave about colonization, about pirates, are all lifted from the book. And I just think it was too easy for Ridley Scott, and I would have much preferred to have seen this film made by somebody like Danny Boyle, who did Sunshine. I think this looks great and it's visual, but it's good, but it's not as good as it's just not as good as the book. So that's where I am at with this film, just to throw it in there, the cat amongst the pigeons. But I mean, I watch it, I enjoy it. It's funny. It's a good space film. It's got the alien sort of noises of it's a Ridley film. Woo! Some guy blowing through a comb. But yeah, I just think you couldn't really fail with the source. I think Ellen mentioned the source material. The source material was so strong. Have we all read the book?
I've not read it.
Just you'll demolish it in weeks. Honestly, it's moving, it's hilarious, it's brilliantly paced. Science,
even though it is quite dense at parts. There's a lot of science stuff. But interestingly, Ridley Scott was second choice.
Right.
Drew Goddard wrote the script. He was originally intending to direct it as well. And then he was lured away to Sony at the time offered him the Spider-Man spin-off, the Sinister Six. So this is when Andrew Garfield was Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man 2 was happening, and they were all teasing all their own universe. They didn't need Marvel. And then Spider-Man 2 happened, and Sinister Six got shelved. But by that point, because Drew Goddard, it was a passion project for him, he's like, oh, I definitely want to do, I love The Martian, but I really want to do Sinister Six. And he had left, and so they quickly had to find another director. And Sir Ridley Scott was second choice, basically. But yeah, I think, as you said, it's the fact that it's such a solid script, it's such solid, they've stuck so closely to the source material. There's very little that's left out of the film. That keeps a great, amazing cast.
Great actors.
And
well, let's talk about the cast, because obviously that's bolstered.
on track.
That bolsters a lot when the cast kind of just rings and chimes together. But so when did this come out? Was it 2014? 2015. And I'm not sure how many of these people I knew of. But 5 years down the line, a lot of these guys are de facto. Well, some of them were like A-listers anyway, but some of them, 5 years down the line, are now in the upper echelons of the acting world. So let's talk through the cast. Who kind of surprised you on this rewatch, guys? Helen?
Well, no one surprised me, because I kind of knew them anyway, and then knew them the first time around. So that you've got obviously Sean Bean, he doesn't die, spoiler. Benedict Wong, who is your go-to for any science fiction film: Moon, Sunshine, Annihilation, Avengers, Doctor Strange, Prometheus. Michael Peña, what's her name? Kristen Wiig.
Kristen Wiig.
Yep. What's his name? Jeff Daniels. Donald Glover. Rooney Mara's sister.
Kate Mara.
Yeah.
That's how she's known, and how she was always known since a teenager. Poor girl.
Yeah, huge cast. And what's her name? The main one?
Jessica Chastain.
Jessica Chastain. So this would be after Interstellar, wouldn't it? I think. So it's like a really, really friendly cast that you.
Chiwetel Ejiofor, you're missing out there.
Oh yeah.
Chewie.
Who? Yeah, he's in it. So like a balanced. It's like a really balanced cast. It's like a group of people who you've kind of seen from other films and bits before, and they've all come together. And Matt Damon's in it as well. And yeah, it's great.
Tell you who surprised me. So I have to ask George, because he's the geek who knows this sort of stuff. But George, have I got this completely wrong? But is Bucky from
Sebastian Stan is in there? Yeah.
Because I only spotted that this time. That was my, oh, wow, surprise moment.
But yeah, the other person that surprised me this time around that I probably didn't notice is Mackenzie Crook. She's been in...
No, Mackenzie Davis.
Sorry, not Mackenzie Crook. Mackenzie Crook's the guy off The Detectorist, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, and The Office.
Yeah. So yes, Mackenzie Davis, who was... she's been in Black Mirror. She's been in the last Terminator film and Blade Runner, yeah?
Yeah.
I thought there was some sort of Ridley Scott connection afterwards. But yeah, she's in a small role. There's a lot of really good actors in tiny roles. Sean Bean is the one that, even though he's called Mitch Henderson, hello, my name's Mitch.
He's kept his accent. It's what I love.
Yeah, no one from Sheffield's called Mitch. That's not allowed.
They are now, but they weren't when he was that age.
I mean, it is probably a blessing, because I think when Sean Bean does do an American accent, it's not very convincing. So, but yeah, I say, it is, and it helps. I think you've got so many good actors in tiny roles. It helps, ground it. It helps sell that believability, I think.
I'm sure I knew of people, like Donald Glover it would have been still in Community, or, the tail end of Community at this point.
He'd been in Girls, I think, by then. That's where I've known him from.
You know from Girls. He was in, like season 3 or 4 Girls, wasn't he?
He's fantastic.
But yeah, coming out of Community, Childish Gambino, and this guy kind of brimming with talent. Was Benedict Wong that big a character at that point? I remember mainly from
Prime.
The IT crowd. Yeah, the IT crowd was in the underground, when it's in the Fight Club stroke countdown episode, which is pure genius. I love it when you get a guy from Manchester representing in a big Hollywood film.
Yeah. But I think he's great. I just, like Ellen, mentioned he's in Sunshine. And that's like, you were the guy who cocked up the calculations in Sunshine, and you're building, and now you've killed the rocket. Somebody get to somebody else. This guy's just unreliable.
So how does the book kind of lean into the science? Because
he explains everything in that his character is both, he is the he's the engineer lead and the botany lead, so he can come at it from both angles. He can fix every problem, and he's the I think is he the chief scientist on the mission? George is the
I can't remember. One thing I was going to ask you, I can't remember. Is it all first person, and it's sort of interactions between him and NASA?
Yeah, because we were just talking about the cast there, and that's, I guess, got to make a big Hollywood film, got to have lots of actors in it. That's quite a detraction from the book, in that the book, it's all him, and it's all messages from NASA. I'd like to think there's 1 or 2 or 3 people that you'll hear it, the characters, the guys on the ground at JPL and whatever, but not the sort of different character arcs that you see in the film. But yeah, he explains everything about Mars, about the craters, about the process of, as I said to George when lockdown began, I was like, I've got potatoes, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to do a Mark Watney, regardless of what happens in the supermarkets. So yeah, he kind of, and he does it with panache style and loads of humor. And that's what you remember from the book.
I will have to carve out some time and read that. I always think when there's film made over a book, which is, the films could be quite dense and theoretical, you often think, oh, it's just going to be a bit of a slog. But often that's not really what attracts filmmakers to scripts, is it? It's kind of fast paced, it's kind of humour, it's kind of intelligence.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks for sharing that. We'll head to Amazon or get it downloaded on a Kindle at some point.
Or Wordery. Or
Wordery.
Alternative to Amazon.
I'm happy with Amazon. Fine. It makes it easy. It's easy.
Done and dusted. It's there on your device.
And it can get their duct tape, which apparently. Did they talk about duct tape in the book? Is it really as strong as it needs to be?
Very important point. So in the book, it's actually duct tape is movie magic time. What's realistic? So NASA actually have a chemical composite which is injection based. So if you know how fiberglass is made, it's almost like instant fiberglass.
Injection molding, yeah.
Yes, but you can't really do that on duct tape. It's much easier. So he goes into detail about when he has that thing when he cracks his suit that he has to do it like that. And I think he uses it a lot more. But for movie magic, duct tape.
And what about the bit where they bring out the plutonium energy source and he's riding in the buggy with that? Surely that's killing him.
I'm sure there's probably I think there is scientifically possible, but it's just not recommended to spend a lot of time around a sort of a radiation.
A nuclear core.
It will keep you warm, though, apparently.
It's why they don't show him actually arriving at Earth in the film. Doesn't make it.
Well, no, we see him at the end. He's teaching a lecture, isn't he?
Oh, yes, we do. He's teaching.
Yeah.
Sorry, he's teaching. Yeah.
Guys, is there anything else before we head to the scores?
I was just going to say it's one of the few films set in space where no one dies.
True.
That's true.
Normally,
I was going to mention other films then, but then that obviously massive spoilers for films.
There'd be a red jacket somewhere.
Space is dangerous. I've learned this from watching a lot of films. And particularly ones where things go wrong.
Did you think it's a bit? I don't know, because it seemed quite grounded. But then, did you think at any point it seemed also a bit far fetched at the same time? Like when they were trying to connect to him, they're traveling at 10 meters per second and is like 200 meters away. And 10 meters per second is fast.
Yeah.
And he's trying to control himself with obviously it's telling a story. But then you think, it seemed like there was such a good basis of how things would work and how things could work. But then, also
I think that's the one thing I've put in my notes that is I put in slightly silly. It's all very, very grounded and gripping until that. And I think again, I'm sort of deferring to Charlie. I don't think that bit's in the book. The whole Iron Man where he pierces the suit to sort of help propel him. I think that is a bit of Hollywood tension, dramatic.
No, it's doesn't he have a fire extinguisher?
No, that's Gravity. So it's
Wall-E.
Wall-E.
Wall-E. Yeah. Okay.
But that was the one sort of bit that kind of like mars it slightly. But I think the only thing I would say that we've talked about the amazing cast, but we haven't talked about how good Matt Damon is. I mean, he sells the drama. He's very funny in it. You get those moments of loneliness. When he's in the pod, he's the only man on a planet. He's got howling storms going on, and he's trying to keep himself sane at night and stuff like that. It's where he's slowly going mad, listening to disco music. It's he plays it really well, and it's obviously the marketing was all based on it was another Matt Damon with titles over his face, which is become a cliche as well. But yeah, I think it's I think I don't know if he got Oscar nominated for it, but I know controversially he won a Golden Globe for Best Comedy Actor in it or something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
Comedy or musical.
It is.
They changed the category after that because they then said that it had to be a comedy, not a drama with comedic moments.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. Yeah, he's brilliant throughout.
All right, let's head to the scores, guys.
Hello, I'm Sam Pay.
And I'm Martin Zoltz-Orstwick.
And we are the two hosts of a podcast called Song by Song, where we listen every week to a track by the musical artist Tom Waits. You might know him for his gravelly voice. Very nice. His appearance in films, but also his multi-decade spanning career involving blues, jazz, and all sorts of other kinds of experimental music.
So we're basically like a book club for Tom Waits, and if that sounds like your cup of tea, you can find us at songbysongpodcast.com or wherever you get podcasts.
Make your next move with American Express Business Platinum. You'll get 5 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. Plus, enjoy access to the American Express Global Lounge Collection. And with the welcome offer of 150,000 points, your business can soar to all new heights. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum. Amex Business Platinum, built for business by American Express.
Welcome to the Flixwatcher scores. All of the scores are out of 5, and you may have decimal places if you wish. And we will start with you, George, with your recommendability, please.
I think a lot of people would enjoy this film. Yes, it can be quite sciencey at times, but I think it's a good story. We've got lots of familiar faces in there. It's really good, really slick, good soundtrack. So I would say 4.5.
Charlie?
Yeah, I'm going to say, I would say 4.5 as well. I think 4 is not enough for this film. I'd say the baggage I bring with me to this film in terms of my love of the book, it's not going to stop me recommending this to anybody. It's like we said in the last one, maybe you don't like sci-fi, so I wouldn't recommend it, but everyone else would be like, it's funny, watch it. So yeah, 4.5.
I think when you talked about Danny Boyle there, my initial thought went straight to, oh yeah, Trainspotting was a fantastic adaptation. There's no way, obviously, the film versus the book is very, very different, because there's just no way you could make that film based on the book as it's presented, but it still works fantastically as a counterpiece. So it would be interesting to see what Danny Boyle would make of the source material in this case.
Or Alex Garland, who'd do the screenplay.
I just think when I saw this, I was just like, maybe Christopher Nolan or Danny Boyle or somebody else, not Ridley Scott. But anyway, we're recommending it.
If Christopher Nolan would have done it, it would have been quite hard going.
Very dry.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's not enough fucking about with time.
Helen?
I really like this film. I can't think of anyone that I wouldn't recommend it to. And I think Matt Damon does such a great job that it doesn't feel like overloaded with science. Like, I can watch this and I'm completely sold on it. And I go, yeah, sure. I get that. You can explain it like that. Totally believe in it. Completely believe in it. And it's just kind of one of those like classic stories of basically just one guy, he keeps coming up against stuff. Things going wrong, but he just keeps going and everyone's on his side and you just feel good watching it. So, I think it's great. Another film this slightly reminds me of is the All Is Lost, which is the Robert Redford one where he's on a boat, and they're kind of similar in that it's just kind of, well, for that film, it's this one person that you're kind of going along with this journey in, and I just think it's great, so I can give it a 5.
4.5. I think it will be too much of a stretch for other people. Thinking back on it, it does talk about the science and stuff, but it doesn't really go into equations. But typically when equations are shown in film, it's either explained in a way that makes sense or it's just kind of glossed over, like in Good Will Hunting, whereby it's just like...
It's just on a blackboard.
Yeah, there's stuff there which is going to be super tedious and blow your mind, so we're not even going to bother. Or people will explain something in a way that makes you go, oh, that's good. But I don't think either of those happen. It just kind of goes, I'm a botanist, therefore I can make potatoes. Or by the way, I know how to make water come out. It just kind of goes, this is what I'm going to do now. And then it goes and does it. So the science is there, but it doesn't go into any kind of minutiae of detail to make it alienating to people. But still, there will be people who kind of go, oh man, this is science. So I'm gonna abstain from it. So 4.5. It was a long-winded way of saying 4.5. Repeat viewing score, George.
I've watched it a few times. I think I saw it. I might have seen it twice at the cinema. I don't.
Oh really?
I think so. But I've watched it at least I think 3 times so far. I mean, it was on Film 4 a few months ago when I was away with work, and it was halfway through and I got stuck watching it, and then I was like, as you're saying, Helen, it's a long film, and especially with Film 4 with all the breaks, it's even longer, and I was just like, I really want to keep watching this, but I've got to go to bed. So I would say repeat viewing. I'd say 3.5.
Charlie.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with a 3. I watched this at the cinema. I bought this on Blu-ray as soon as it came out, and then I've obviously watched it in 2 sittings in preparation for this. But yeah, I mean, sorry, just to jump back what you were saying about Apollo 13, the one thing about in terms of repeat viewing is every time I'm just like, oh, if only this was real, you know, because like you're rooting for him, and it's like amazing what everyone achieves, and that they get him home, and it's like none of it's real, you know. It's just that if you compare it to Apollo 13, it's just because we talked about the fact-based narrative. Yeah, it's just that's the one thing every time I see him, like, oh, we really need to get somebody marooned on Mars for this to resonate with everybody, you know.
Helen.
So yeah, I saw it at the cinema, and then I think I'd definitely seen it before you suggested it, and enjoyed watching it again. It is 2 hours 21 minutes, which you can watch like quite a few films in that runtime. So although I did enjoy watching it, I'm probably not going to watch it again in a while. I get 3.5 as well.
I'm going to go for 2. Really enjoy it, but I don't think it's going to be a go-to repeat view film for me. I think there'll just be others that step up to the plate when I want them to. Small screen score, George.
Yeah, I think it does suffer. It is, as I say, I've talked about Ridley Scott's an amazing visualist. There's some amazing vistas, of Mars, of all the mountains and stuff. I think they filmed that in Jordan, even though a lot of it was mainly shot on studio. I think it has got some amazing cinematography, and it's got obviously all the space stuff. I watched it on my new sort of HD telly, and I think even watched half of it on projector. So I think it does suffer a bit on the small screen. So I'm going to say 2.
Charlie.
Sacrilege. I would say like 1. Like this is exactly whereas another film that would be more TV based you could watch on a small screen. This is all about. I've got a 4K projector, and I'd watch it on that with surround sound. For me, that's what this sort of film is for. It's for, and so I'd probably have to be in a sorry state of affairs to whip out my my smartphone and chuck this on. I'd rather watch an episode of something, to be honest, on my smartphone.
Well, we're talking TV size here, really, but it's TV versus cinema is the small screen score.
Oh, sorry, I didn't get that. Yeah, no, I'd still give it a very low score of say 2. It's not the same as what you get at the cinema. So far away.
Helen.
I really enjoyed seeing it at the cinema, but then the subsequent watches, because I've had that first watch in the cinema, I haven't been too offended. I mean, unlikely it's going to get much screening at the cinema, so Netflix is probably your best bet. So definitely watch it on a TV rather than a laptop to get the best experience. So I'm going to go 3.5.
Yeah, I'm going to go for 2 here. 3. I'm going to go for 2 because it's great in the cinema. But I just felt watching it on my decent sized TV screen here. I just thought, yeah, it's better in the cinema, isn't it? But it's good. It's good. A lot of it was shot from like a GoPro camera, and it didn't rely too heavily on the vistas. But I think it still did work well when those kind of those kind of shots were presented to us on the bigger screen versus at home. Engagement score, George.
Well, yeah, I say linking back to what I said earlier. I caught half of it on telly a few months ago and found myself like drawn into watching it. And I'd say, yeah, it's got, because of that cast, because of that script, I think it is really engaging. So I'm going to go high and say 4.
Charlie?
Yeah, I would go higher. I'd say 4.5. I think this hits all the numbers. I find it very engaging, and I think a lot of that is down to, you've got to give, Sir Ridley some credit. There's some stuff that isn't in the book that you get from his visuals, and there's a great cast, and you want to watch it till the end. As George said, you start watching this film, it's kind of like you want to see it to the end.
Helen.
Yeah, I can go quite high on this, 4.5. I did think this time watching it for the third time around that the kind of third act is my least favourite act, and my favourite bit is where he's kind of figuring things out and, you know, kind of like having his little discoveries and things. And like the last part probably feels like the most stretched and, I don't know, my least favourite bit of it. So yeah, 4.5.
I'm going to go to 4.65. I think I really did enjoy it. Both times it was engaging and hooked you in. I'm taking a few points off for the Iron Man prancing around in the space in space, being caught by Jessica Chastain bit, because that did take me out of it a bit, because I think everything preceding that seemed was more grounded but still gripping, and I didn't think they needed to do that really to close it out at the end of the day. Yes, a 4.65. That gives us an overall score. Let's just do the maths here. 3.60313. It's the small screen score that took it down a few pegs, and also repeat viewing wasn't too high either. Still a decent score though.
Yep, recommendation.
But not breaking. You're mixing us with another podcaster, but still not breaking the four barrier. So we do ask people. We go to Twitter just before recording, and we say, in this case, we are reviewing The Martian with George and Charlie from Retro Ramble blog. Have you seen it? Tell us your thoughts for an on-air shout out on Flixwatcher. So George, do you want to take the first one that's on your screen?
Okay, so this is first one from Scheitgeist Pod, saying Robinson Crusoe for people who loved Apollo 13. Twice in the IMAX wasn't enough for me, so I had to read the book. And I think he's given it 5 potatoes, which is very nice.
Charlie?
Yeah, so our friends over at Sudden Double Deep, the coming up with the Poo-tato, best Poo-tato film I've ever seen. 4-star.
And Helen, do you want to say the last one?
Yeah, so this is from Liam H. Dempsey. Scott's finest since Gladiator, but that's probably more down to Drew Goddard's script, the source material, and Damon than him, and he's given that 4 stars.
Same kind of thing that Charlie was saying. It's a shame we can't get 2 people at this, the same film done by 2 separate directors, and it'd be really interesting to see what the difference is. I'm sure they've done that kind of idea with like short films, haven't they? But
so should we start petitioning for release the Goddard cut?
Yeah. So George, we've got another one.
This is Lee TB. He says, didn't like it first time, but probably because it wasn't the film I was expecting. Charming, funny, and despite its length, not over-bloated like so many of his films from the last 20 years. Not sure if the science adds up, but feels grounded, and that makes it work. And he's given it 3 potatoes and something else. I think, let's say 3.5.
Yeah, 3.5.
Which ties in very much with what we were talking about.
With potato emojis.
Yeah, fantastic. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell whoever's listening where we can find you online and say goodbye to those same people?
Yes, so our podcast Retro Ramble is available on all your podcast serving apps and devices, and you can listen to it on our blog, so retroramble.blog. And we are on Facebook, we are on Twitter, and we're also on Instagram as well. I myself am also on Letterboxd, so at George McGee. So I occasionally put the odd mini review on there, but there's also loads of reviews on our website if you want to have a look at that as well.
And Charlie?
Yeah, well, thanks again for letting us come on. As we've said before, we've got some great episodes lined up. It's always 80s or 90s action. George and I are not as organized as the guys here on Flixwatcher. We're a bit more fast and loose and underprepared, but it's been great to be on here. It's great to come on and to speak with like-minded people. But as George says, there's our blog. We're on Facebook, quite a lot, Instagram, if you want to get in touch and see what we're doing next. But yeah, thanks for having us.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming on and picking The Martian.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Enjoyed this episode of Flixwatcher Podcast? Why not leave us a 5-star review on iTunes? You can also follow us at FlixWatcherPod on Twitter, and we're at FlixWatcher on Instagram. Thanks as always to the mighty people for their mighty tunes, and Ben from Rockwood Audio for his awesome editing skills. If you're looking to get your podcast edited as sweet as this, get in touch with Ben, and that's Rockwood, ROKK Wood Audio. Tell them Flixwatcher sent you.
You just heard a Stripped Media production.